NFL owners don't want to pick him up because they don't want to get a nasty tweet from Donald Trump. Do you believe that?
Donald Trump despises activist athletes.
I think that they realize that they're the voice for the voiceless. They remember their communities that they came from. They remember where they've risen to, but they realize that their problems are still as great as it was before they were recognized as athletes.
Take it from the legendary John Carlos.
I think it's had a huge impact on sports, a huge negative impact on sports, and let politics remain separate.
Trump does this intentionally and pulls out all the stops in voicing staunch opposition.
You know, an athlete is recognized universally, as well as the President of the United States. I mean, you can look at Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali or Jackie Robinson or Jack Johnson. All of them had a voice. These youngsters today have a voice, and they realize that they have to protect the rights of those young individuals that's coming behind them.
Carlos, like many, understand the power they hold.
But they shouldn't be protesting on the sidelines during a football game, especially when they're making $10 million a year for something that they'd be doing anyway for free if they weren't in the league or the NFL.
The former POTUS demands athletes stop bringing to light the real issues and mandate they stay in one box and one box only, sports.
I think we had so much strife going on throughout the world, dealing with racial issues and social issues. As young athletes, we felt that we had a significant role in this because we traveled the world to represent America. We saw what was happening in America to people of color, blacks in particular. We felt that we wanted to make a statement of some sort, maybe to withdraw from the Olympic movement altogether. Say we'll take a step back and not go to the Olympic Games. So we proposed a possible Olympic boycott.
Carlos, a revolutionary athlete, would never agree to these terms. At the 1968 Games in Mexico, he and Tommie Smith would conduct a protest that is amongst the most iconic we've ever seen in sports. Smith would explain their stance with ABC News that year to the world.
The right glove that I wore on my right hand signified the power within Black America. The left glove my teammate John Carlos wore on his left hand also signified Black unity. The scarf that was worn around my neck signified blackness. John Carlos and me wore socks, black socks without shoes, to also signify our poverty.
This is exactly what many in positions of power oppose: fearless athletes.
You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
Of course, he says this over and over again. Meanwhile,
I decided that I want to make a statement. I'm here at the games, but I can't just merely go and win a medal and get on the victory stand and just be there like everything is just peachy cream. So I decided that I would approach Mr. Smith. We collaborated. We agreed, yes, we will make a statement. And then we brought artifacts together: the gloves, the socks, the scarf, the beads, the Olympic Project for Human Rights button. And we approached the victory stand. Mind you now, we have been receiving threats throughout that 2-year period leading up to the games. But my thoughts were, well, they might take my life, but they can never take this demonstration away. Once it's done, it's done. I felt that was far more important than my life, because when I came into the games, I didn't go to the games to make a statement for John Carlos. I meant to make that statement for my kids and their peers, for your kids, for a lot of you youngsters that's out in the audience today. That statement still registers 51 years later. So it was necessary to make a universal statement for people to open their minds and begin to challenge themselves in terms of what type of individual, what type of human being I am. Because I can't change it by merely putting my fist to the sky. We as a society have to change the ills of society.
Carlos shows how unity and togetherness is the key for humanity, even with allowing himself to be the sacrificial lamb for progress.
You know, on Friday afternoon here in Washington, our former colleague Jimmy the Greek made some regrettable and offensive remarks for which he has apologized. Yesterday, CBS issued a statement disassociating itself from those remarks. It goes without saying that his comments do not reflect in any way the thinking or attitudes of the rest of us here at CBS Sports.
This man, longtime broadcaster Brent Musburger, would cover the 1968 Olympics at the time and write, Tommie Smith and John Carlos looked like a couple of black-skinned stormtroopers. He labeled the athletes juvenile, ignoble, and unimaginative without ever actually addressing the righteousness of the protest. He'd add, one gets a little tired of having the United States run down by athletes who are enjoying themselves at the expense of their country. Perhaps it's time 20-year-old athletes quit passing themselves off as social philosophers.
Brent Musburger called you and Tommie Smith black stormtroopers. I think that was the phrase that he used.
Black-skinned stormtroopers.
Black-skinned stormtroopers on television. Has he apologized to you yet?
Well, you know, Brent Musburger doesn't even exist in my mind, so I don't even know who he is. You know,
Good answer.
He didn't mean anything to me 51 years ago. He doesn't mean anything to me today because he's been proven to be wrong.
To this day, many have reported Musburger refuses to acknowledge not just the racist column, but also Carlos's presence when in the same room together.
People don't want to see all of the politics. They've got enough politics with me and with everybody else. And they don't want to see it with football and sports on Sunday or whenever they happen to be watching.
Again, a preposterous way of thinking.
I don't pay attention to people that don't make sense. I mean, they didn't make any sense to Jack Johnson or to Jackie Robinson because they told them the same thing. To Paul Robeson, all of them, out there Gibson, all of them received that same note that they put under my door. Just shut up and play the game. But see, I look at it like this. You know, most of you guys out there in the audience, y'all are born into this world and you want to make the football team or you want to make the basketball team, baseball team. Why? Because you want to get in the game. The concept of the game is what? To win. But there's other individuals in society that didn't go out to try and get on the team, but they was pushed into the game of life. That's the game that I'm concerned about winning. So I'm not concerned about those individuals that tell me just go out and play sports because before I was an athlete, I was a human being. When I die, I'm going to be that human being. I can't come here and say I'm here to serve just to be on the athletic field and have no concerns about what happens once I leave the athletic field. Individuals will look at John Carlos another 150 years from now if we still spinning in this world. And they would look at me in terms of me being a blueprint. They would turn the pages one day and say, someone did stand up. Someone did make a statement. And that goes across the board. I don't care what your ethnic background is or what your sexual preference is. It goes across the board to say someone stood up against all odds to say that you're wrong and had no fear. See, because I always told people to say, man, you know you can get killed. And I tell them, say, man, I was born dead. I'm fighting to live.
Because of their protest, they caught hell, as Carlos would explain here.
We got back to the States. Let's say when we went to the Olympic Games, the sun was shining, it was bright, we could see the rainbows in the sky. And when we got back home, it was chaos. It was stormy weather, you know, just lightning everywhere. But one of the most important things that I had to learn is that those individuals that were supposed to be your peers and your friends that were supposed to have an understanding, they begin to step away and move away from you. You start to sniff yourself to see, am I smelling bad? Do I have caca on my shirt? Why are my friends leaving? It took 2 years for me to realize that they weren't leaving because they didn't have any love or respect for me or like me. They were leaving for fear of reprisal, the same type of reprisal that we had to endure for. And I say we, I'm talking about Tommie Smith, Peter Norman, as well as John Carlos, for 40 plus years. But I would go for another 140 years to do that again if it was necessary. You know, you can, as a young individual, this is the way I used to frame this thing years ago. I was a young individual, I was idealistic, I had a paradigm in terms of how society could be, how we could love one another and help one another to make this a beautiful earth. And I felt like I was on top of this pine tree, the highest pine tree you could imagine. And I felt like I was on the highest branch. And I knew what I was about to do was going to disturb or upset or infringe upon other people's rights. And I felt that that branch would break, but I didn't have any concern about the branch breaking because there was so many branches underneath that understood why I was there. And they would catch me when that branch broke. But I learned they retract those branches. So when we took the fall and we hit the ground so hard, we bounced almost back to the top. But yet and still, it was worth doing it. And I realized at the same time that guy that made that statement, every man's an island within himself. And I had to think for myself in terms of what's my role in this life that God gave me? Is it merely for me just to be a superstar and stick my chest out and say, yeah, I'm the greatest? Nah, I want all individuals to have that same opportunity and be able to challenge themselves to be the best they can be and defy anyone that tries to stop them. Tell them that they don't have a right to go to this university and they don't have a right to go to this community, or you can't get into this hospital. I think about, Charles Drew. And I think about this man inventing blood plasma, a black man. And merely because he was a black man, the invention that he made, he lost his life based on the color of his skin. So when you sit back and think about that, as well as black soldiers that went to the First World War, such as my father, and came home and was disrespected, think about Harry Belafonte coming as a young man and they're telling him that he couldn't swim in the public pool. Think about John Carlos as a little kid wanting to go to the Olympics. The first time he heard about the Olympics, you heard about someone swimming the English Channel. And I said, Pop, what's the English Channel? I want to swim it. And then I heard about the Olympic Games. Well, Daddy, what's the Olympics? Well, that's where the greatest athletes in the world come together to see who's the strongest physically and who's the strongest mentally. Well, Pop, do they have swimming? Yes, son. I'm going to be the first black to represent America. And he told me after a year, because he saw I was very serious about getting ready to make that team. And he came to me and he told me, he said, son, you're never going to be able to go to the Olympics as a swimmer. What are you talking about, Dad? I'm the best. I'm the best in New York. I said, why can't we go? And he put his hand out and he rubbed his hand. I thought he was rubbing a bug bite. But actually, he was telling me just merely because of the color of one's skin, they cannot be in this planet what God intended for them to be. My whole life I've been trying to change that. For the rest of my life, I will continue to try and change it. So we can all come together as we are in this audience together to be one.
A lot to get to here. First things first, if you can, please do become a channel member at youtube.com/TYT Sports to help keep us afloat, and or go to tyt.com/join. In addition, you can support me on my socials, on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It seems as though throughout the years, whether it is the Donald Trumps, the Marco Rubios, the Avery Brundages, and everyone in between, that there is an intentional lack of understanding, whether it is to score cheap political points or to reach one of the highest offices in the land. Each and every time, the blueprint has been laid out, and now it is there for the next politicians to come. And that is this: attack the anthem. This is in 1968. It was a silent protest, and yet somehow, some way, it has always been those in opposition of athletes conducting themselves however they wish and making the statement however they wish to focus on anthem, flag, nationalism. And it is not, for all intents and purposes, to hear these athletes out in what they have to say. We saw it when these men, brave men, came back from the Olympics. They were metaphorically beaten to a pulp. They could not get a job. These are men who are on the podium at the Olympics, and no one would give them the time of day when it comes to employment. And it shows. It shows the power structure, and it shows how we as society, to this day, when an athlete protests, continue to focus on the wrong things instead of hearing the athlete out.